All right, I want to be very clear before I get started. I despise Don Lemon. Thanks. I despise Don Lemon. Not casually, not vaguely, but fundamentally. Now, I want that on the record before anyone tries to confuse what I'm going to say with sympathy. Don Lemon earned his critics. He earned mine. He earned my critique, that's for sure. He spent years doing something that has poisoned American media, pretending to be a journalist while acting like an activist with a studio budget. He didn't inform the public, he instructed them. He didn't explore complexity, flattened it. He didn't invite disagreement, he pathologized it. If you didn't share his worldview, you weren't just wrong, you were backward, you were dangerous, you were suspect. And that wasn't journalism, that was moral theater. Lemon made a career out of certainty. He wasn't curious, he wasn't skeptical, he already knew the answers. And his job, as he saw it, was to correct the audience. So, night after night, policy disagreements were reframed as moral failures. Political opponents weren't debated, they were diagnosed. And ordinary Americans weren't treated as fellow citizens, but as problems to be managed. That posture does real damage, and we've seen it. When media figures stop distinguishing between reporting and advocacy, people don't just lose faith in them, but they lose faith in the institution itself. And Don Lemon leaned into that collapse. He didn't resist it, he modeled it. So let me say this plainly. I do not mourn the fall of Don Lemon's credibility. I don't want his career rehabilitated. I don't want him recast as a misunderstood truth teller. The record is the record. But here's where the line has to be drawn. Even though I despise Don Lemon, I am not comfortable with cheering his arrest because handcuffs are not neutral, mug shots are not neutral, public booking, legal fees, reputational damage, none of that waits for a verdict. We've seen that already. When the government chooses arrest over summons or citation, it is imposing punishment before guilt is established. That's what people mean when they say the process become punishment. Putting somebody through the process is indeed the punishment, and it may be the only punishment they get, but it's punishment nonetheless. It's punishment without guilt. And that really should bother anybody who actually believes in limits on power. If the state's goal was to simply adjudicate alleged wrongdoing, there are tools that don't involve spectacle. Arrest becomes necessary when someone is a danger, a flight risk, hold that thought, or actively obstructing justice. Does somebody with the means of Don Lemon could they be a flight risk? Yes. It didn't seem like it was going to be, but it could be. So for those of us who think, well, he was a flight risk, possible. It didn't seem like it, but I understand how you got there. I do. I understand how you got there. So we're not fighting on that level, but I see how you got there. So when these conditions aren't present, though, arrest stop looking like necessity and starts looking like messaging. And messaging through force is dangerous. Don Lemon made a career out of performative outrage. symbolic gestures, public shaming, moral dramatization. Now he's experiencing a system that knows how to perform power just as well as he knows how to perform virtue. Now, that doesn't make it just. The real issue isn't whether Don Lemon deserves discomfort, because I believe he does. The issue is precedent. When we decide it's fine to use the machinery of the state aggressively because we dislike the target, yes, and I know what you're thinking. This is the lawfare that happened to Donald Trump. Yes. We are blessing a standard that will not remain loyal to our side because power never does. Today, it's a progressive media figure. Tomorrow, it's a pastor or a parent at a school board meeting or an independent journalist without corporate insulation. Once arrest becomes a signal instead of a necessity, enforcement stops being about the law and starts being about leverage. There's another principle at stake here. Proximity is not guilt. Being present at a controversial event is not the same as conspiring to violate rights. In this particular instance, we're going to find out through investigation if indeed Don Lemon conspired with the organizers of the event to invade the church. We're going to find that out. When intent is inferred loosely and the individual actors are blurred into collective culpability, enforcement becomes arbitrary. And our arbitrary enforcement chills speech, not just for activists, but for observers, reporters, and citizens who don't want to be swept up for being too close to the wrong moment. And we saw this with the J6 shipment. That chilling effect doesn't care about ideology. And here's the part that may be the hardest for some people to hear. Sharing this, because it happened to Don Lemon, trains the system to do it again. Again, only the next time, it won't be somebody you despise. It'll be somebody you agree with. And the president will already be set. I don't defend Don Lemon. I hope I've gotten that across to you. But I do defend standards. I don't excuse his body of work because, I don't. I reject the idea that the state should arrest as theater to make a point, deterrence, or a moral pronunciation. Because once the process becomes punishment, the guardrails are gone. And history tells us very clearly what happens after that. Now, we often think that we can't think it, two things can't be true at the same time, but they can, because you can hold two thoughts at one time. You can despise Don Lemon's career and oppose unnecessary state coercion. You can reject his worldview and insist that power be restrained. And that's not weakness. That's principle. And principle, unlike outrage, still matters. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.